Hello everyone, my name's Naysy, and today I'm here to help you get better at Beat Saber. Now, I definitely don't claim to be the best at Beat Saber. I usually focus more on the dance aspect in Beat Saber rather than rank, but I do have over 500 hours in the game, and I picked up a few tips and tricks over the years that I'd love to share with you guys. Whether you're new to Beat Saber or just want to reach that next difficulty level, then this video is for you, or even if you are a more experienced player, maybe I'll mention something in this video that you weren't aware of previously. But regardless, stay tuned for my top 10 tips and tricks on how to get better at Beat Saber. Now for tip number 1, I have no fail. I think utilizing no fail has been the biggest thing that's helped me get better at Beat Saber. If you're not familiar with no fail, it's a little setting on the left hand side of your Beat Saber screen, and what it does, it allows you to play the whole song all the way to the end, regardless of how many blocks you may miss or hit incorrectly. Some of you may relate where you're stuck between difficulty levels, where hard's too easy but expert's too hard. This is a great thing to use because it helps you get more experience with the harder maps. You can play the song all the way through the end and get a better understanding for the rhythms and the patterns in that map. And it doesn't matter if you're missing blocks in the process, because you're attempting to play the map, you're learning it as you go, which is the most important thing when trying to get better. And there's no shame in trying to get better at the game. I always recommend switching on, try the harder songs, because it's definitely going to help because you're learning those maps without punishment, and the more practice you get at it, the more likely you are to beat the song in the future. Now for tip number 2, I have practice mode. Now for the longest time, I had no idea the setting even existed. If you're not familiar with practice mode, it's the little graduation hat icon that's next to the play button within Beat Saber. And once you click on that, it then opens up a new menu. And in this menu, you have 2 options with the slidey bar. The top one is a timestamp, so you can scroll along and choose which section you'd like the song to start at. And then below that, you have speed. So you can slow down the song all the way down to 50%, which allows you to practice the song slowly so you can get a better understanding of the maps and patterns within it. Now, I use this feature all the time, especially on songs that have a really hard section in them. So practice mode is definitely a really great feature if you are struggling with more difficult songs or even difficult sections within songs. It's also something I used a lot for Eminem Godzilla, because it's a very tricky section in that as well. So definitely recommend that feature if you haven't heard of it before. Now for tip number 3, I have tracking. Now tracking can be such a vital part when taking on fast songs in Beat Saber. It's really important to understand the tracking complications that can arise with your headset. If you're an Oculus Quest 1 or an Oculus Quest 2 or an Oculus Rift S or a Vive Cosmos, they use inside-out tracking, which means they use the cameras on the front of the headset to track the controllers. This means they're a little bit more limited when it comes to tracking. That means if anything is outside the field of view of these cameras, it's not going to be able to track the controllers correctly. So when using these headsets, it's important to take those limitations into consideration and keep your hands out in front of you as much as you can. I often find if you put your hands all the way back, it loses tracking, but as soon as you bring them up to the front of the camera, it does catch up with the tracking, but it can involve a little bit of lag, which can affect accuracy when playing Beat Saber. So try and keep your hands in front of you as much as possible if you want best accuracy in Beat Saber. But also due to this type of tracking, there can be external factors like your environment that can have an effect. Things like reflective surfaces can wreak havoc on your tracking. If you have mirrors or glass in your room or even shiny TV screens, consider covering them up when playing Beat Saber. You also want to make sure you're in a well-lit room. The Oculus Quest especially lights a lot of light, but it doesn't like a lot of sunlight. Be careful if you're in a room with a lot of sunlight. The sunlight can damage the lenses and can also affect tracking. You want to make sure you're being wary of that. Now, another quirk with these headsets that due to the type of tracking they use, things like LED lights can cause issue with tracking. If you have RGB lights in your room or things like nano leaves, even Christmas lights, they can be a big thing this time of year. The controller uses similar technology that reacts like a Christmas light would, so that's how it gets confused. It thinks the controller's all the way over there when it's actually in your hand. So try and turn all that stuff off when you're playing Oculus Quest games. Another thing for Oculus Quest users to consider is the batteries that you're using. The Oculus Quest controller needs a 1.5 volt battery. So if you're using rechargeable batteries or cheap disposable batteries, make sure on the little writing that it says 1.5, because anything lower than that's not going to be providing enough power to your controller. And of course, if tracking is whack, try consider resetting your play space. This is especially important if the light in your room has changed or a piece of furniture has been moved. All these things can affect the tracking, so it's important to reset it so it can recalibrate the play space and its tracking. Now, if you're using a Valve Index or HTC Vive or Cosmos Elite, then you're using Lighthouse trackers, and generally the tracking on these are pretty great, but making sure your lighthouses are placed optimally is really important. They have to be at least 2 meters high and angled at the correct direction, and that the glass at the front is free of smudges. I did have tracking issues once, I could not work it out, and all it ended up to be was a bit of smudging on my lighthouse, so make sure to check that one too. Also, the lighthouses can be affected by reflective surfaces, so if you're in a room with lots of glass or mirrors or reflective TVs or computer screens, then maybe try covering them up and see if that makes a difference on your tracking. But ultimately, the tracking on these headsets is mwah. I love it for playing Beat Saber. It tracks everything amazingly. So if you are having issues, hopefully it's not too difficult to fix. Now, if you own an OG Oculus Rift like I used to, I had a bunch of issues with tracking on these ones, but I highly recommend researching USB bandwidth because that solves 75% of my tracking problems with these. So I highly recommend looking into that. So I highly recommend trying out these tracking issues if you do feel like your tracking is off sometimes. But if you're still having tracking issues, it may come down to a performance issue, which brings us on to tip number 4, optimization. Now, whether using an Oculus Quest or a VR PC, optimizing your game to run as smooth as possible can help you get that extra performance boost you need to tackle that fast song. I highly recommend this if you're using a PC and having a bit of performance issues, or if you're someone who's streaming or recording content and feeling a bit of lag. Now, Beat Saber have a lot of features enabled in the game to make the environment look stunning and beautiful, but unfortunately these features also take up a lot of processing power, which means less bandwidth you could be using for smoother gameplay. One thing I recommend for improving performance and your eyesight is turning on static lights. You may see in the background of the Beat Saber map that there's these beautiful moving lights that often move in time with the music. They look super awesome, but unfortunately they can take a performance hit, and also they can create distractions while you're trying to hit the blocks. By enabling static lights, these lights stop moving and they also don't change color, so they create less distractions and also free up resources to be able to provide smoother gameplay. Another similar setting to turn off is debris. Usually when you slice a block in the game, you see the block splice in half and the blocks fly off in different directions. This is a really cool experience in the game, but again, having to process and render those blocks flying through the air does take up a bit of processing power, and also the blocks flying everywhere can kind of create distractions when you're trying to focus on the gameplay. Now, if you are a PC player and you want to completely get rid of all the debris, you can download a mod called Yeet Debris, and this completely removes any debris from the blocks, which is a really handy feature if you are someone going for high scores or if you just hate the blocks flying everywhere. I highly recommend playing around with these settings, see if you do notice a difference or not. I find sometimes it does make a big difference, especially if I'm tackling a really fast, hard song and I don't want any distractions, I want the game to run smooth. I find these settings are the best for making it run as smooth as possible. Now, if you're after some advanced optimization, I recommend jumping into the graphics settings. If you head into the main screen and click on the settings tab and then navigate over to graphics, we have a few settings there that we can turn down the graphic quality in the game to help us get better performance there as well. You can turn down things like mirror quality. If you notice when you look at the floor in the game, you see reflections of the blocks and your sabers, and this looks really, really cool, but again, it's taking up a lot of processing power, which could be better utilized for gameplay smoothness. So if you turn this off, I personally turn this off completely because you don't really notice it too much in the game, and this can help free up a lot more resources. Another one I always turn off is smoke. Again, it looks really cool, but once you turn it off, you don't really notice it's gone, to be honest. And another big one is anti-aliasing. This is how it renders the blocks and environment, so turning that down a bit can give you a really good performance boost. I recommend experimenting with this, see if you get any performance boost from turning it down or up. Because personally, I still really like my game to look beautiful, so I don't want to turn everything off, but if you are going for those high scores, then turning everything down to the minimum does have a lot of benefit. Now, I highly recommend experimenting with those features, turn things off and on, and see what does give you a bit of a performance boost. If there's ever moments in the game where you're like, I swear I hit that, then optimizing your gameplay to run smoother can be the best way to eliminate that. For tip number 5, I have grip. Now, a lot of the pro Beat Saber players will tell you how important grip is, and when I refer to grip, I'm talking about how you hold the controller in a way that increases flexibility and movement. Personally, I'm pretty basic and I still use the default grip, but I have experimented with different grips in the past and haven't found one that quite works for me. And ultimately, how you hold your controller should be comfortable for you, but if you want some info on different grips and how it can improve your accuracy and flexibility, then keep on watching. Now, if you're using an Oculus Quest 1 or an Oculus Quest 2 or Oculus Rift S, then generally this is the default position. But a commonly used grip is the claw grip. The claw grip is when you grab your 2 fingers through the ring and grab them over the button area. I personally struggle with this one a little bit because I have pretty tiny hands, so I don't find it too comfortable, but what this does is it increases the flexibility of your wrists. So that way you're getting all the movement from your wrists instead of your arms, which is a really vital part on trying to increase speed and accuracy in Beat Saber. I think an important part of trying out new grips is to make sure you don't injure yourself because you are using different muscle groups and movements, so make sure you're not hurting yourself and you're taking it slow, but ultimately it has to be comfortable for you and it has to actually improve your accuracy and speed, otherwise there's no point. Now there are lots of different grip types recommended by the community, and I'll leave a link down below to a guide made by Denya, which shows you all the different grips for these controllers. Now, if you're using a valve index like I do, then I use a variation of the default grip. The default grip is where you put your hand all the way through this little adjustment area and you put your palm all the way through the controller so you can easily access the trigger. But for me, I have my palm outside of that grip area and tighten the grip around my fingers. This is also referred to as the stick grip. This means it gives me more wrist mobility and this section doesn't hit my forearm. Some people may use a few variations of this one. I know Bandit uses an interesting grip, so you're more than welcome to experiment with your own grips and see what works for you. And if you find something that's super amazing, then you can share it with others. But for now, I'll leave a link down below for some recommended index grips. And unfortunately, I don't own any Vibe ones and haven't really used them, so I'm not experienced on the grips with the Vibe ones. But again, I'll leave a link down below for recommended Vibe grips. So experiment with different grips, see what works for you. I think the big thing is have a look at what the pro players use and get inspired by what they use and see if that works for you, because really it comes down to experimentation and comfort. Now, something else to consider is stance. If you've seen any of my videos, you know I dance around like an idiot, and obviously that's not going to help with accuracy or score, but I do find stepping back and forth a little bit when doing songs I'm trying to get a good score on does personally help me a little, but I see lots of pro players who can stand completely still and still get perfect scores. But something I also see a lot of the pro players do as well is have like a crab stance. I call it a crab stance. And that's where you hold your elbows up and you rely on all the rotation from your forearms and your wrists rather than having to move your whole arm up and down to hit the blocks. Now, a good example of this is LS Toast. You can see how he plays with these arms up quite high, and that gives him the full motion of the forearm and the wrist. So give that style a go if you like, but personally, I like dancing around like an idiot, so I'm more than happy to wail my arms around. Now for tip number 6, I have sight reading. This may not make a lot of sense to new Beat Saber players, but experienced players may know what I mean. Being able to sight read in Beat Saber makes a huge difference, especially when playing songs for the first time. There's been plenty of times I've been accused of lying because I say a song is my first attempt, but really it comes down to sight read and your ability to learn the song as you go. Sight reading is a term commonly used in music where a musician is able to pick up a sheet of paper and be able to play the song straight away, and essentially the same applies for Beat Saber. The more you play Beat Saber, over time you'll start to learn that there's different sections of the maps that are similar throughout all the songs, and you start to memorize how these runs link up to each other. You start to get familiar with if one goes up, the next swipe's going to be down, or if it's going to be a section that goes right to left and right again. And really a lot of this does come down to practice, but it's important to be consciously aware of the repetitive sections and runs because you'll definitely start to see them in another map. If a map has good flow, it means you'll be able to predict what's coming up in the map ahead. But a lot of this does come down to practice and keeping an eye out for repetitive sections and runs. For number 7, I have don't think. Just don't think, just don't do it. It's easy, right? No, but seriously, this one's a bit of a weird one, but one thing I love about Beat Saber is that it's a very meditative experience. I often find when I'm playing, I'm just completely zoned out. I'm not really even focusing on the maps, but I'm able to hit the blocks and hit them super accurately, get nothing wrong, and it feels like my brain isn't even processing what's going on sometimes. It's just doing it by itself. But apparently there's a word for this. It's called flow. In psychology, a flow state, also known as being in the zone, is a mental state in which a person's performing some activity is fully immersed in a feeling of energized focus. Usually this can happen if you find the task challenging and rewarding. So next time you play Beat Saber, I encourage you to have lots of fun with it, try not to overthink it, and just let that flow take over. Now for tip number 8, I have scoring. It doesn't matter how fast you can hit the blocks, unless you can understand the scoring process, you'll never truly improve. I personally don't focus too much on the score, but I know enough of the basics to know that when I do want to go for a high score, I've got the knowledge equipped to be able to tackle it. If you are someone trying to get high scores or get ranked on the leaderboards, I highly recommend checking out the Cube Community's YouTube channel or the Beat Saber Modding Group Wiki Guide. They have some really great guides to help you fully understand the scoring system. I'll link them down below, but if you want a basic rundown, I've got you covered. So when hitting the blocks, you may notice little scores pop up at the bottom of the screen, and these are dependent on the accuracy and angle in which you hit the blocks. The highest possible score you can get when hitting a block is 115, and this is determined by a couple of factors. The first factor is accuracy and how you hit the block. Hitting the block in the center is going to help contribute to that top score. And the second factor is angle, or swing angle that you're hitting the block. So when you're hitting a block, you're starting from an upward swing. And when you start from this position, you want to be at a 100-degree angle. Some say 90, but go for 100 if you want the highest chance of getting the best score. And that's 100 degrees from the block in front of you. So you want to start from a 100-degree position. And then when you approach the block, you want to slice all the way down. And then on your follow through, you want to finish at a 60-degree angle. So start at 100, slice through, and 60-degree angle from where the block is positioned. This is often referred to as a full swing, so if you're full swinging every block and hitting in the middle, you should be able to get 115 points. Obviously, this is very difficult to do consistently, especially on hard songs. That's why there's such a niche and prestige around Beat Saber leaderboards. If you want to break it down completely, the 100-degree approach on the block is worth 70 points, the 60-degree follow through is worth 30 points, and cutting it in half perfectly is worth 15 points. So being able to hit the blocks at those angles and quickly is where your wrists really play a big part. As for all the other tips I've mentioned, like the grip are an important factor. Something I find that helps a lot is flicking, so you're doing faster movements as you go through, so you flick your saber quickly when hitting the blocks. Again, I highly recommend watching LS Toast because with his mixed reality gameplay, you get a really good vision of what it looks like in the game. But if you really want to understand the tech behind this, make sure to check out the Beat Saber modding group working guide. But for me, I like dancing around like an idiot instead of trying to go for high scores. But you know what? That's a-okay. People's enjoyment of the game are different. Some enjoy dancing, some enjoy trying to get the top score possible. And it doesn't matter how you enjoy the game, it's all valid and it's all fun for everyone. For number 9, I've got Score Saber. Now, if you enjoyed the tips about getting ranked on the leaderboard, then Score Saber might tickle your fancy. It's also a really great motivator for improving at Beat Saber as well. Score Saber is a community-funded initiative which is essentially considered the main global leaderboard for Beat Saber. Score Saber tracks players globally and ranks them from best in the world and within your country. Now, there's a lot more to this than just playing songs and hoping you end up on the leaderboard. You have to make sure you're playing a ranked song. Now, these ranked songs have been determined to be of high quality and determined to be good enough quality to determine skill by. So if you want to make it on the leaderboard, you've got to make sure the songs you're playing are ranked. They have a list available on the website, or you can download a Beat Saber mod on PC, which allows you to sort your songs by whether they're ranked or not. So essentially, this is more of a PSA to let you know about Score Saber if you weren't aware of it previously, as I know a good leaderboard can be a great motivator for people to get better at Beat Saber. Now for tip number 10, I think you knew it was coming, and it is practice. There's no denying it, practice makes perfect. It counts for Beat Saber, it counts for anything in our lives. The more you do something, the more you're going to get better at it, and ultimately there are no shortcuts. I think an important part of that is to make sure you're not comparing yourself to others. There are people who may have way more hours in the game than you, so don't go comparing yourself to them. There's also people who have different skill sets. Personally, I have a background in dancing and also music, and I find that really helps me pick up the game really quickly and to also dance around like an idiot. So make sure you're progressing at your own time. It's your own journey. Have fun with it. But also remember, it doesn't have to be serious, doesn't have to be a chore. And remember, the more fun you're having with Beat Saber, the more regularly you're going to want to play it. And of course, it's great aerobic exercise, which is great for everyone. And not only that, exercise unlocks endorphins, and endorphins make you happy. Speaking of happy, I'm doing another Oculus Quest giveaway! This time, it's a brand new Oculus Quest 2 that just came out last month. I'll be giving it away on Christmas Day. And if you want to enter, just head to the Instagram link in the description down below and follow the steps there. But if you already own an Oculus Quest, then maybe share it with a friend or family member who you think deserves an Oculus Quest. But hopefully this will make someone very happy on Christmas Day. But make sure to follow my Instagram anyway, because I post a lot of VR clips and Beat Saber clips there, more than I upload to YouTube. So it's definitely the best place to be following me. And also you have a chance to win an Oculus Quest. But that's it from me. If this video has helped you, make sure to leave a thumbs up because it really supports my channel. And subscribe, especially if you like Beat Saber and Beat Saber tips and tricks or just general VR stuff because I post lots of that stuff. And also follow my Twitch channel if you want to catch my VR and Beat Saber streams. But that's everything. Thanks for watching this video. Bye!